Welcome to the Bachelor Universe podcast. I am your host, Jim Alexander, and as always, we will be reviewing the episode of The Bachelorette. And this week, we're already coming to episode 4 on the season, so moving quickly now. The next coming week, we'll have 2 episodes, back-to-back nights. It was announced that Bachelor will air on Monday and on Tuesday, so that's something that's going to have doubled episodes next week, so look out for that. But for now, we are reviewing episode 4, Rachel's season number 13. So let's get to it. Kenny versus Lee. That is the talk. That is the issue. They teased it at the end of last episode, and Kenny and Lee are getting back to it. And they're starting off in this episode by feuding. There's a little shouting match going on, and Kenny gets rowdy. Well, he's a wrestler, right? This is what he does. But Rachel hears it all. So you can fight, boys, but Rachel is lurking. Always remember that. She was lurking, and that affected her. So after she heard that, she proceeds to kind of break down. And then we see her literally crying and questioning if she can do this and if she wants to be part of this show. And almost, to me, honestly, it almost feels like a shtick, like a gimmick. We saw the same thing almost in every season. You saw with Nick even on The Bachelor, that he kind of wanted to give up and he was done with this process. Like, one little incident happens and seems like these contestants go off the rails and they can't handle it anymore and want to give up. That's not a reason to give up. And second of all, you signed up knowing that this is going to have some controversy and things happen that you might not like. But it just seems to be like a little ploy at times to get attention to the contestant and think that they might be done when we know in reality they're not. So there you go with that. But yeah, Rachel gives the whole shtick about how she's breaking down and she can't do this. And the interesting thing here is she says how difficult it is for her to be a black woman and in this experience and this position that she's placed in and the expectations. Now, I don't know where she's getting this from, but black, white, Asian, Latino, doesn't matter. There's no specific thing that's more difficult for her or should be than anyone else, especially on this show, especially if we're talking about pertaining to the show. Now, in real world, there's different things, but on this show, I mean, granted, she's the first African-American to be a bachelor or bachelorette, but what expectations, what position that she's placed in? She chose this position. You wanted to be a bachelorette. You could have easily said that you're not interested in this whole gig and it would have been all over and nothing to worry about, but you sought it out. You wanted this. So no one's putting any expectation, at least where I'm seeing from the media or anything like that. People are been all on her side from the time she was picked as a bachelorette. She's gotten really good support from the media and from fans, so I guess she'd be the last person. There's been some controversial contestants that people didn't want. Nick, for example, he was getting a lot of drawback that no one wanted him to be the bachelor, but with her, I just don't know where this is coming from. This doesn't make sense, and it's kind of a selfish thing, if you ask me, and the way she's placing attention on herself for really no reason at all, and the way she's singling herself out and in a light way victimizing herself. I don't know, maybe that's not the right word, but I'm not sure what she means by the position she's placed in. You wanted it, you got it, love the attention that it comes with it, and now you don't complain about it. So now, so much for that. So there we go. Now, right away we get to our rose ceremony, which is now the last few seasons we've learned the thing they like to do in the beginning of an episode. No more are the roast ceremonies at the end of episodes. Now, they're most frequently seen at the beginning. So, someone needs to start going home, right? There's a lot of guys out there still on this show, so trimming the fat. So there we go. So the first rose goes to Dean and Will. Well, in reverse order, whichever you might take it. Will and Dean both get roses. Jonathan, the goof. Peter, the favorite. Adam and the dummy. We haven't seen much of Adam lately or heard much about him, and neither about Will. I didn't even know he was on the show. I didn't even know who Will was. Then, of course, favorite Brian. Him and Peter are so far the leading favorites. And Dean. Dean squeezing in there, too, as the top three. Then Matt. Who? What? Yeah, same question. Josiah, who's kind of lurking, and here and there he gets around on camera. Jack Stone, he just has a cool name. That's the only reason we know him. Iggy and Kenny, of course, got the final rose. So, well, not the finals, but came towards the end of it. So, but he did get it after the whole making her upset kind of thing. So the final rose came down to Lee, Diggy, and Bryce. So who gets it out of those? Lee, of course, because he's a villain. So you can't send the villain home early. You got to give him the rose. So he, of course, gets it. So Diggy and Bryce bid well. Diggy, a Chicago guy, so a local Chicago man going back home. And Bryce, the only thing I remember him for was beating Kenny in a mud wrestling competition that Kenny threw. Kenny definitely put him over. So just so the guy could get a little bit of attention. But villains got a vil, and we know Lee is continuing the villainous streak. The only villain so far this season, in a sense. Well, now that we have DeMario all gone, and I think Josiah tried to establish himself as a villain, but he really hasn't come to the surface. Like, he's just a big talker, basically. But they don't give him enough attention to make him a villain. Now, some Southern lovin', and by that, the first trip of the season. They are leaving town, and they're going to Hilton Head Island, South Carolina. That's the place everyone's headed to. Date card arrives immediately, so Dean is the man that gets the solo date. So here we go. We're going to see Dean on a solo date. That should be interesting. And, of course, Rachel has high expectations for him on this date, and they start out with some bubbly, so that's good. Pop open some champagne and let's get it going. But then they have a Goodyear blimp interrupt them. Not like literally, but like flying over, and you know what that means. Of course, Dean kind of lets her know that he's fascinated with the blimp, but he is afraid of heights. So what do you know? Blimp comes and picks them up. Yeah, it actually lands and they go on the blimp. Kind of cool to go on a Goodyear blimp. But yeah, for Dean, not so much. Afraid of heights. So Rachel's going to have to play the role of the caretaker and the more macho person when it comes to heights. So there we go. They put poor Dean on this blimp, take him up. At least it's not a hot air balloon. How about that? Kind of good. But she makes it better by telling sweaty Dean, and Dean was sweating, that it's like riding on a bus. That's what she compares it to, riding on a bus. Yeah. Only difference, Rachel, it's a bus that's going straight up, like really high up. So not really like a bus, because you look down and you don't see anything. But so Rachel puts a Nick Vale. She pulls a Nick Vale out of the hat. What does she do? She basically tries to comfort Dean and makes out with him. So she probably was prepared now that she saw Nick on his season by bringing mints or gum. And, well, Dean makes it a lot easier by not puking. So he didn't do a Vanessa and puke, but they did make out up in the air. Shaky and sweaty Dean braved through it. So congrats, man. Yeah, so good job, Dean, by holding down your lunch. So there you go. Meanwhile, there's another group date card that arrives, and that goes to Alex, Anthony, Peter, Brian, Jonathan, Adam, Matt, Kenny, Lee, Iggy, Eric, Will, and Josiah. Okay, so that means the solo date goes to Jack Stone. So the man with a cool name gets a solo date. Finally, we might know a little bit more about Jack Stone, because right now we know very little about him. So, but Lee, the instigator that he is, of course, attempts to get in the headspace of Jack Stone by kind of just bringing up the whole idea of like, oh, the pressure that's awaiting him. Like, hey, this is what's coming up. You know, a solo date must not a good thing all the time. Could mean that you're going home. So it must not be the best for you, which is a lie, because the solo date is always good, unless it's a 2-on-1. Then it's not. But a solo date, got to take it. It gives an opportunity to meet someone like Rachel in a better way and not worry about it. So back to the dinner after the whole blimp with Dean. Rachel and Dean started discussing her upbringing and her parents. And Dean basically tells her that he grew up in a very strict religious family. And the sad part is that we found out that Dean's mother passed away. She passed away of breast cancer when he was young. He was a teenager. So that's a very sad story. You know, you hear these stories sometimes from these contestants, and in this case, Dean lost his mom early. It's obviously relatable to a lot of people who have dealt with parents or family members with cancer, seen friends or family deal with theirs, you know. So it's a tough thing, and there's no one that hasn't been involved with someone or related to someone who has had cancer. So that's always very difficult. But it's a big moment for Dean to really open up, and that in itself deserves a rose, you know. So she doesn't hesitate but gives it to him, and that's a big deal. Like, the guy really opened up about his life. So but then as soon as he gets the rose, just as on every solo date, what happens? A band arrives. A music band pops out of nowhere and starts playing, and of course Dean and Rachel start dancing. So there we go. That's what happens usually, right? Which is crazy that they always have it. Like, just switch it up sometimes, guys. Don't always make it about that, you know. It's just, come on. You have to switch it up. Do something besides a band after a dinner at night. But no, that's what it is. So now it gets crazy because the group date, right? What do we get on a group date? We get a group date activity that starts off with a boat ride. So they go on a fancy, cool boat, which is pretty awesome, right? Josiah, and may I highlight, badly attempts to prove he's the ultimate alpha male by taking off his shirt and doing push-ups while Rachel's sitting on top of him when he's doing the push-ups. So, yeah, very cool, Josiah. Your 5 seconds of fame. But Peter, the boat party was cool, but Peter had to ruin it. And Peter ruined it by starting off with a rap. Like, he does like a shameful rap song, which, geez, does not work. Bad choice, Peter. Yep. If ever in her eyes he looked, it took himself down a notch, that's probably it. That's all it took to get this boat party to come to a screeching halt. And that was it for the boat party. On to the next activity, which was a spelling bee. Now, I feel like we've seen this before, but like spelling bees, such a kiddish activity. It's like when they go to schools and, play teacher or something, or student, whatever they do. So Adam is the first one to spell out squirt. He got it right. Alex gets passion. Jonathan gets caress. Like, these are really easy words. Like, you could have a first grader do this with no problem. Anthony gets schmuck. Maybe fitting. Kenny gets champagne, and yup, he's the first one to fumble. He can't spell champagne right. Wow. I don't know what to say about Kenny. Stick to wrestling, bro. Peter gets coitus. So there we go. He gets Peter gets a very sexual term. which is coitus, something he will never be doing with Rachel. So there you go, Peter. Maybe he will. Well, it's just an odd thing. And they had kids there, too. They had to plug the kids up. You had to tell the kids to plug their ears. It's so weird. Anything. Well, there you go. Will and Josiah are the final two, right? Since, Anthony couldn't stick around. So Will gets physiological, and Josiah wins it all with polyamorous. So, damn, Josiah, surprising with him knowing polyamorous and getting it on the first try, huh? So, yeah, the best of the worst spellers is Josiah. So, congratulations. It's like basically being, I don't know what kind of bragging rights that is, but it's like claiming to be tallest midget, like you just don't win with being the winner of this spelling bee. But he does get a trophy cup, a big trophy cup to celebrate. So there you go. After all, Josiah won something for once. Now into the Iggy gossip. Yes. Rachel really must be smitten with Peter, though, because considering she's willing to lie to him by telling him how she loves his freestyle rap on a boat. Like, there's no woman ever in the history of mankind that Peter's rap is actually good. So this is a first. Unreal. Next up is Eric, and kudos to him for admitting that he can't mud wrestle or play ball. So there we go. Eric with some honesty. And finally, some truth on the show. There we go. And that would be Iggy. Iggy has anointed himself as a protector of Rachel. That's his role. I don't know if he's vying for her love or anything, but he is certainly willing to be her protector, right? And by that, he proceeds to give her the lowdown on the guys in the house that he questions, such as Josiah, with the cup trophy now and, being the best or the worst spelling guys. So Iggy returns to the group and actually confronts Josiah. So at least he's man about it. He's not doing his behind the back and being a snitch. He confronts Josiah. But then Eric steps up and confronts Iggy on calling out people. So then Eric gets involved over Josiah and they team up and go at it at Iggy, right? So yeah, there we go. So while this drama between Iggy and Josiah is going on, Sneaky Lee, takes an opportunity to sneak over by Rachel and chat her up. And by that, we know what he's trying to do. He's trying to pad himself and make the other guys look bad, right? That's what Lee does. So Rachel wants to hear the details of this feud with Kenny, right? So fuel to the fire right there. So Lee's throwing low blows at Kenny, and basically he calls him a 225-pound ballerina in the testimonial, not to Rachel. But that's like, come on. You know what? Like, seriously, Lee, that's like saying that, I mean, if you're comparing Kenny to a 225-pound ballerina, that would mean that you would be a 125-pound fairy, like, in comparison, right? Lee, watch what you're talking about, boy. That's my estimate. So, I think it's a fairly good one, right? Don't you think? I think so. But Kenny does himself no favors by trying to recite his poem about Rachel. So then Kenny gets his time with Rachel, and he's got his poem about her. He clears the air about the involvement. So Kenny is still startled. So when Rachel kind of tells him what she's heard from Lee and, how she took the whole incident, that she thinks he might be aggressive, and Kenny really doesn't feel right about it, and that you can see he's affected by it. Like, he's genuinely startled about it, and that doesn't seem like that he's that kind of a guy. So he takes matters into his own hands and confronts Lee. So shit's about to get real, guys, and as usual, to be continued next week. They always do this to us, right? I mean, it wasn't that dramatic, so he's basically going to confront Lee, kind of taps on his shoulder, and they walk away together, and bam. That was it. End of the episode. I mean, it's kind of a standard run-of-the-mill episode, I'd say. Nothing crazy about it. Nothing too, special or dramatic. I didn't find this to be very dramatic. I mean, Kenny and Lee did definitely dominate the start and the end of the episode. You had a little bit of the Iggy gossip sprinkled in. And the dates were kind of lame. I mean, you had the spelling bee, and I guess the blimp was all right. The boat party's kind of standard, but not too bad. But they just weren't great. And we didn't see Jack Stone's date. That was forgotten, apparently. So Jack Stone, apparently you were supposed to have a date, but you didn't. I'm sure you'll show it next week. But next week it really ramps up. Well, the previews for next week is it's Kenny versus Lee feud. That's where it's at. Like this is the thing that's dominating next week, and apparently they're gonna have a 2-on-1 date. So someone's leaving. Probably gonna be Lee, but that's what's going down next week. Blood will be shed, though, it seems, by Kenny, because I initially thought in a season preview we saw Kenny's kind of eye bleeding, that this would be something that would be like maybe a group date where they go to some movie set and they had to like put some makeup on. But this might be an actual genuine blood. We'll see what happens. I doubt they will fight to a point where Kenny's bleeding. It never gets that aggressive, but we'll see. But this definitely is going to dominate next week. The Kenny and Lee, they're pitting them against each other on a 2-on-1. And the next week will be a two-night special. So it's going to be a Monday and Tuesday night of The Bachelor. So we're getting 2 nights crammed in. It's probably just to make up for the missed episode the week prior because of the NBA Finals. So we had the NBA Finals, and that really took away a Monday. So we would have been basically a week ahead at this point, but we're not because of that, right? So things are changing, and we get a special episode. They do this frequently, that they actually add an episode, right? Because of whatever, because of being preempted by sports or some presidential speech or whatever it might be. So, or they just like a holiday or something. But we will be getting that. So that's it for this week. Standard episode, and we'll see what happens. On to episode 5 and 6, right? So a lot of guys left in a running. Still favorites would be Dean had a really good date, so that puts him up there in the top 3, definitely. At this point, after 4 episodes, I would rank it. I would be going with Peter. I think Brian fell off a little bit. He'd be number 2 and Dean number 3, but he's closing in on Brian at 2. Brian's fell off a little bit the last few episodes. But I say Peter's still in the running. I mean, after she basically gives him props for that bad rap, come on. He has to be a favorite. So that is it for the podcast this week. I do have some big news to announce to you guys finally. I did mention previously that I might have a special guest, right? As in a guest co-host or an interview. Well, I have the interview, and that will be, I'm pleased to announce, that will be an interview with Iggy. Yes, the gossiper, the one that's now has some little bit of controversy around him. Iggy will be doing an interview with me. We actually conducted it, so you guys will be hearing that real soon with this podcast. Probably it will be posted together, so that's going to be awesome. It's an hour plus with Iggy. The interview, actually, you can see it right now. If you want to get an early peek at it, it is at my website. That would be, we changed, the Bachelor Universe podcast has now a new website. So the website is The Bachelor Universe. So THE BachelorUniverse.com. So it's no more WordPress. It's no more Chicago Now or whatever it might have been, and it's not Bachelor Universe. It is thebacheloruniverse.com. Check it out, and the interview with Iggy's up there. So that is my new site. Definitely read my recaps and reviews, and I will also be posting information on something new, a new experience I've had. So that's coming up there. So a lot of exciting things coming on. A lot of announcement as they will be happening. So might be some more stuff with Iggy here. This might not be a one and only thing, but we're working on things behind the scenes. I will keep you updated on what the happenings are. Maybe I'll have some more guests coming up too. So this is a really good interview with Iggy. Make sure to check it out. He really delves into his experience, a lot of behind the scenes stuff, that he talks about when the cameras weren't rolling, and definitely who is favorites and not favorites in the house. And he spills some beans on some spoilers, so you guys need to check it out. It's a really fun, interesting, cool interview, and it's out now and coming soon to this podcast too, under Southgate Media, right? Bachelor Universe. So for now, I am out for this week. You can always catch me on Twitter at JimRKO. That didn't change. Or definitely check out my sites. Leave comments, subscribe to this podcast for sure. Follow my blog. All these things are greatly appreciated and will help bringing this content to you guys. The more you subscribe, the more you follow, the more you add me on Twitter and tweet me, the better I have chances to getting these interviews and bringing more podcasts to you and more content. So for now, I am out. We're going to have a 2-part next week. I'm not sure if I'm going to combine them into one podcast. I might just do that or just do 2 separate ones. I'm guessing it's going to be a recap of the 2 podcasts. So it's going to be a longer version, but we'll be doing that. All right? So there we go. Quick news also on the Bachelor controversy officially has ended. So news of that has now been official, and no more Bachelor in Paradise controversy. I guess DeMario has been absolved of anything. The production has definitely found no guilt, apparently. So they will resume the show, actually. How about that? So not only is it not getting canceled, but Bachelor in Paradise is happening this summer. The contestants are now on their way back, or maybe already have arrived, and they will be filming, just restarting the filming for Bachelor in Paradise. So we're not sure if DeMario or the victim, quote unquote, I think you guys know who that is. But yeah, I don't think she's a victim anymore, apparently, since this whole thing ended. But you guys know who was creating chaos in Nick's season, right? That's the person we're talking about. But I'm not sure if they're going to be back on Paradise. I would think not. I don't think you would want to bring that mess back up or any sort of controversy there. I would keep them away, actually, both of them, and just go back the contestants that were sent home, right? Maybe bring 2 new people. So Bachelor in Paradise back to filming. It will be airing this summer, probably a little bit later maybe than the original August timeline. Maybe they won't. Maybe they did lose about a week and a half of filming, so that could be caught up in a way. So that is still happening. And apparently Evan and Carly's wedding also will be televised. I'm sure that's going to be tied into Paradise. So there you go. Big news. Huge controversy, and now they're back on with it. So there you go. You're going to get some Paradise this summer. For now, I am out, and I will talk to you guys later next week. And make sure to check out the interview I did with Iggy. See you guys. Jim Alexander, out.